Your heart is the support system for every organ in your body. The brain can't function without the heart pumping. The liver can't quiver when the heart has no rhythm. The quality of your life depends on the quality of your heart. Matters of the Heart podcast is a safe space for you to face the true matters of your heart. The issues that causes stress even when you're seemingly at rest. Issues like hurt, pain, betrayal, and shame are things that are buried alive in the back of the brain. I call them undiagnosed heart traumas. Others refer to them as heartbreak, when in fact it's heartache because the heart can't break. I know, sounds pretty interesting to hear, but you'll learn more as you enter in and allow the healing to begin. I'm Datasha Mayo, the execution strategist. Welcome to Matters of the Heart. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am super excited to be back with you guys on this Monday, bringing Matters of the Heart podcast to you. Today, we are talking about broken mindset, broken marriage from the male's perspective. And so I have with me Jasper Williams again. You guys have probably come to know him by now. And then also Jermaine Washington to give you their perspective. For those that are joining us for the first time, I'm Datasha Mayo, the execution strategist. Execution in all things well, mind, body, soul, and spirit. It is proven that when you enter my space, your vibration elevates. I'm going to say that again. It is proven that when you enter my space, your vibration elevates. What does that mean? Your mindset goes to the next dimension. Your thoughts, your way of thinking goes to the next dimension. I am very intentional that when people enter my space, they do not leave me the same way they came, but they encounter change. And so I want to challenge you this morning with that. How are you encountering people? Or for that matter, how are people encountering you? Are you leaving them the same or are you leaving them change? Be very intentional with your presence. That's all you have, right? You probably, when you grew up, you probably heard, my word is my bond, but what about your presence? How does your presence leave people? Better or broken? And so that's what we're talking about today. Broken mindsets, broken marriage. But as always, Matters of the Heart podcast is never limited to one place. In this area, we're talking about marriage, but the tools, the principles that you receive today can transcend into every area of your life if you let it. So take the limits off, take the box off about this message and ask God, what area can I apply this to if it doesn't land for you in marriage? If you're single, if you're divorced, if you're, engaged, whatever the case may be, don't limit the twos and the principles to just one area, but to all areas of your life. And so again, we have Jasper Williams and Jermaine Washington to bring the male perspective, guys. And as you know, we keep it real and raw. What does that mean? No holding back. The areas that we bring to you, we have healed. We've set time apart for ourselves to see where we had the challenge in ourselves, right? Because before you can begin to point the finger at someone else, you really should be pointing the finger back at yourself. And so that's what we're here to share is the pointing the finger back at ourselves, the where we missed it, and then how we will course correct as we go along. And here's what I mean by course correct. There's never, ever a perfect principle, right? Or there's never, ever a perfect situation. You go and you grow as you go along. one thing that I've found out in my research and my own experiences and my own encounters is that people marry a state, right? Not a destination. And so when you marry somebody, they're in that present state, but you don't go along thinking, oh, this present state is going to change. And more importantly, that it should change at some point. And so we look at people where they are, never giving them opportunity to grow where God has called them to be. And so don't marry a state, not just a person, yourself. Like, don't marry the state that you in. Know that you are going to a new level. Know that you are going to a new dimension and allow yourself the evolving. And so I want to start with Jermaine. And the question on the table is dealing with the inner me, right? And so what I mean by that is when you entered into your marriage, did you deal with the inner you before entering in?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, not at that time in my life when I decided to get married. I had some things that I had to change prior to the marriage. At that time, it was 1998. I had met this young lady, who was my wife. Prior to that, I was dating multiple women. I mean, talking about 6 or 7 different women, up to a month at one point in time. And it wasn't. I look back and said, you know what? These women are okay with this. It must be fine. They don't care I had other women in my life because I was honest with them. I wasn't serious about having a relationship. I was honest with them about, nah, I don't want marriage at this time. I was doing the things as if you would do, as if you were in a relationship, but I didn't commit to them. Mm-hmm. Fast forward to April of 1998. I woke up one morning, looked in the mirror, and did not like the person God had revealed to me. It was an ugly image staring back at me. I made that conscious decision then to eliminate all of the women that I was having relationships with because it was unhealthy. Mm-hmm. Some was positive about it and some were negative about it. They did not want to let go. It was a brutal process trying to get these women out of my life at that time. When I met my wife to be in August of 98, I'm like, she was aware of my past. She was aware that I was a former, for lack of better words, jiggerhole. Let's be real. That's what I was. I was dating multiple women, didn't really care about how I affected their lives, interact with them, interact with their families, their children, went on vacations with them, but would not commit to a relationship at no shape or form at that time in my life. I met her and like, okay, Lord, I got to change my mindset. I got to change who I am. I could no longer live the life that I lived before. So I had to change. But going into that marriage, I did not change.
Yeah. And so when you said that she knew your past, you felt like that was enough to help you to heal because God had already revealed to you the areas that you needed to, first of all, face and then heal. But then you met somebody in the interim and then you invited them in to your unhealed areas.
Correct.
And so in that, you entered in without addressing the enemy, which is also the inner me. And in that, what did you take into the marriage that you should not have?
Well, let's take it back. I married the wrong woman. I ignored all the telltale signs from the Lord that she was not the right woman for me. But I ignored all of those messages, all of those images, all of those thoughts that he gave me. He revealed to me things that are going to happen in our marriage even before it happened. But I still ignored it. And I went in thinking, oh, well, she's willing to accept who I am. This must be the right woman for me. It must be a mistake. I can't believe that God will allow someone to come into my life with my past, and I'm still kind of on the fence as to how I was acting at that time. Yes, I did change for the sake of that marriage. Yes, I did change prior to going into that marriage. Let me just say that. Yeah. I was willing to change the way I was living, my lifestyle. I settled down, and unfortunately, it was the wrong marriage.
Yeah. Well, you said fortunately.
Unfortunately.
Oh, unfortunately. Okay. And so here's the thing. Here's where I want to drive home is that there was no expectation for anything else than what you brought to the table, right? What I mean by that is that we enter into these relationships and we see the red flags, right? We see all these red flags going around now. So that's the perfect segue to mention the red flags. And so we see these red flags on both sides, on our side and on their side. And so there was no request for elevation or change. So you just entered in because you felt like she accepted you where you were, right?
Right.
And so that looks like compromise, right? You know, you'll often hear, well, you got to compromise. No two people are the same, but there is a such thing as healthy compromise and unhealthy compromise. And I'll go more into that because I want Jasper to share his before I go into that. But we can sometimes get off with this compromise. We need to identify whether it's healthy or not, and then what exactly am I compromising? And so, Jasper, I ask you that same question. Is that were there areas that you knew of that was an enemy to yourself that you didn't address before you said I do?
Yeah, how I want to start by saying, how can a unhealthy person become healthy again? Okay, one of the things I knew that the enemy, right, the ENEMY, was inside of me, and a lot of times we don't look at the inside of us, and we don't get that portion of our lives together. We're always looking at the exterior, but we don't realize that the exterior, right, is a direct reflection of the interior. Because one of the things for me, I had definitely insecure issues. I had a whole lot of things going on that I thought or didn't even think about to address before I got married. And then as I got married, these things just elevated and came to the forefront. It came to the surface. And so I have not been dealing with it. So now I'm insecure, got abandonment issues. Want to always please people, didn't know how to say no, and all these kind of things. And so it showed up in my marriage. It showed out. So.
Yeah. And so I appreciate you sharing those details, about abandonment, the insecurities, because oftentimes that's how people enter in and then they never ever deal with them. For the most part, I like to believe some people really don't know. They look at it as like, oh, this is just me, deal with it or not, when in fact it's not you. It's who you've learned to be through a previous environment, whether it's your parents, whether it's friends, whether it's prior relationships. It's who you've learned to be and you just kind of adapted to it. And so I want to discuss the compromise, right? When you enter into a marriage, you look at yourself and you say, okay, well, I have these issues and then this person has these issues. We can compromise on these things. But what were some of the things that you compromised on that you felt like you should not have?
I say this, Josh. Let me say this, that I think it will be a awesome experience when people come to the table and they start dating, that you just discard your baggage. You know what I'm saying? That's the time that you discard your bag. You dump your bag on the table and say, "Hey, this is up with me," and because I didn't know that I had to FaceTime you every hour on the hour. I didn't know I had to text you every 15 minutes to make you secure. I didn't know, that I had to send you flowers 3 times a week to let you know that
those things are surface. And I believe that people deal with surface. That's why we have divorce, right? Because they deal with the surface, but we got to get to the root of the matter, right? When you talk about, I didn't know I needed to FaceTime you every hour on an hour. That's scary. real thing. But what is the root of that thing, right?
Insecurity.
And so, well, not just insecurity, that is the trigger of the root, right? The root is what happened to you as a child that you feel like you need to have someone secure you when you should already be secure, right? Did somebody tell you they were going to do something and then they didn't keep their word? Did somebody cheat on you? You know, let's just put it out there. And now you feel like you have to protect yourself and FaceTime every hour on the hour. Let's get to the root of the matter so that you can not only give it the boot, but you can get ahead of it and you can begin to see those triggers trying to rise up in other areas of your life. And so oftentimes we deal with surface stuff, but we really got to get to the root of the matter as to why it is that you are requiring these things. Jermaine, you have anything to add?
Yeah, that's something that I noticed in my marriage. The triggers that she had, the small little things I may have said, I may have done, was like a trigger to her. And I'm like, I just said good morning, or I just said hello. And she could have been in a different state of mind at that time that she just didn't want to communicate. Leave me alone. There were some things that I tried to resolve when I saw those triggers coming forth. I was like, okay, how can I approach this differently? You assume that I'm accused of something that you're doing and you're not. Tell me how to approach you so I won't make that same mistake again. So those are the things that you have to talk about and discuss within the marriage. Like you said, when you discover those triggers, sit down and talk to the individual, find out why are they acting in that manner, and is there anything you can do to stay away from what I call the no-fly zones or the red flag issues, stay away from them. But just have that open and honest, candid conversation about, listen, I'm not here to tear you down. I'm not here to cause you to experience what you had in the past. However, we need to deal with this issue so it doesn't affect our marriage.
Yeah. And so when we talk about broken mindset, broken marriage, what are those things that were broken in you that you felt like played a part in the demise or the divide, if you will, of your marriage? Now, when I say what are the broken things, one of the things that you mentioned so eloquently, Jermaine, was that what are the areas that are considered no-fly zone, right? And sometimes people don't have the language to explain what their no-fly zone is. And here's where the man comes in as the priest and the king of the home, is to seek God for the bride that he has selected, right? And so when I think about this, the strong man being bound comes to mind, right? And it says, how can somebody come in and take over your house unless the strong man is bound? And so the mindset of the man is oftentimes already bound before he says, I do. And so they enter in already bound. And so when these triggers come up from their spouse, because they're already bound, they don't know how to fight for the family, right? They don't know how to go before the throne of God to say, help me, help my wife, right? And so it's what are those things that you felt like were the demise that could have helped, but actually hindered the marriage?
I know for me, Tasha, it started at an early age. Okay. When I was in school, the girls, used to say, "You black."
Yeah.
It's a pretty hair though. It's how black, so when they get mad at you, they be like, "You black, ugly," so and that planted a seed.
Yeah.
On the inside of me.
Yeah.
Right. That would not harvest until later on in life, and so these issues that you go through in life that are undetected, and they go with you throughout a life, and the moment somebody call you black,
yeah,
when your wife say, "You get your black tail and go," then you, I'm not saying that you said that. I'm just using that as an example.
I probably did. Yes.
I just didn't want to put your business out there.
Listen, raw and real, right?
Right. So it rose up a level of insecurity, like and so.
And I love that you said that it planted a seed, right? And so you held
that's
on
for
to
you.
the seed.
Here's the thing. It plant that. See, Satan is so. He's not. I'm not saying he's crafty, not smart. I won't say he's intelligent. He's crafty.
Yeah.
Okay. So he knew because he's an archangel. Okay. He's still an archangel. He just reverse of God, but he's still an archangel, and so he knows that one day I was going to marry Tasha. So he plants those seeds, in the first grade, in the second grade, in the third grade. You follow what I'm saying? That all it does is begin to build up.
All right, but I want to make sure that, I know where you're going, but I want to make sure for the sake of time that we get there so that we can help the people identify the root, right? So we're talking about the root here, right? The broken mindset before you say I do happened way back in grade school, right? Yeah. And so when you enter in, the strong man is already bound back from grade school.
The stage is already set.
Right. Okay. And so it's addressing those things before you say I do.
Right. For me in my marriage, I had to constantly defend myself to let her know that I was sincere about the relationship. Let's take it back further. Like I said, she knew about my past. She knew that I was dating because I was very honest with her before we started dating. I shared some things about her just in case, these women popped up out of nowhere or she heard the water cooler conversations throughout the family. I had this conversation with her like, listen, I'm no longer like that. But throughout our marriage and throughout our relationship, I found myself constantly trying to prove to her that I was no longer that person.
Yeah.
Something I may have said, maybe I had my phone on silent or had the phone locked, or when I came in the house, I put the phone down and didn't leave it up. It kind of triggered those raw emotions in her, the insecurities, the trust. Like he's still operating in that manner. I don't think he's the person that he says he is that's standing in front of me right now, which caused some things to go awry. And for me, just to wrap this up, I didn't do a better job at that time as a husband, as a leader, to let her know that I'm no longer operating in this manner. I should have did more conversation with her. I did decide to go to counseling when I saw that we were having these issues in our marriage. We went one day and that was it. She didn't want to go back anymore.
Okay.
I realized that we have to be conscientious of the things that we do. I remember always leaving my phone so that Tasha can go in it if she wanted to, because I had nothing to hide. And so you have to be conscientious about, okay, if she thinking this thing about me, make sure my phone is on. Make sure my phone is unlocked. Make sure my phone is set up right. Make sure that if she can go in it, she can see where she want to be and be satisfied with it. And that's the role that I had to play to learn how to be conscientious. Now, I had some other areas, that, like I said, I had some other areas of insecurity that should have been poured out when we was dating. When we was dating each other and going out to dinner, like the insecurity about, I didn't know, I thought I was ugly because I was dark skinned. And it wasn't until I went to college and found out that, So
how did that how do you feel like that affected or impacted the marriage?
It did. It impacted the marriage because I wasn't as secure as I thought that I was.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't secure that I thought that I was, and so.
In that insecurity, right? It spills out into other areas, and so for you, it was to looking the part, right? You
Oh,
spent
yeah.
your last dime on
Oh,
looking
yeah.
amazing, which then in turn created issues in the household, right?
Right,
So we
right.
got to make it plain and clear. So we got to connect
Right.
it for the people to
Right.
understand. And so that seed that was sown in grade school showed up in the marriage because you had to do extra to fill the void of the insecurity. In doing the extra, it created turmoil because then it impacted the finances. Whereas if you would have healed that, or at least dealt with it, and then been able to identify and say, hey, this is an area where I need some help, some growth, and some development in. When I was, in grade school, people called me ugly, and I thought I was. And so I find myself always doing extra to look the part. Women do that all the time, especially when they're overweight. They will spend more money to look good, to feel good, right? And it's temporary. And so if you were able to say that, then coming in, I would have been able to identify it instead of attacking it.
Right.
Right.
We don't.
That's the key right there, is being able to understand and have that language to be vulnerable and open with your spouse to say, this is an area that I need help with.
Right.
But see, that's not the rules to the game. That's not the rule to the game. The rule to the game is I'm going to show up and give you my best of me. And then later on in life, when it's too late, then you learn the rest of me. Okay?
Yeah.
And so that's where the problem comes in at. I need to show you the rest of me first, so that you can make a decision saying if you want to deal with that or not.
Right. But see, here's the thing. The best of who you think you are is not the best. It's a mess. It's a mess.
It's a
right?
mess.
And so, but I love that. I love your transparency there, because people really believe, let me show you the best of me, also known as your representative.
Yeah.
And so if it's a representative, it's not real.
It's not real.
And so being able to identify that, hey, listen, I'm going to enter into marriage real. If this is what we are going to do, I am going to lay all of my burdens down.
This is who I am.
Exactly.
Be organic. Okay. This is who I am. I'm insecure in this area. I'm great in this area.
Yeah. And so why do you think that men, this is a question for you and Jermaine, why do you think that men have a hard time sharing that?
Oh,
because as men, we're supposed to be strong. We're not supposed to show emotions. We're not supposed to show that we care. We're not supposed to show that we're weak and vulnerable. If we do that, we'd be called a sissy. You do that, you called other names. So we can't, it's not really, and this is across all spectrums, not just in the Black community, but in all communities, in all races. Men cannot show that they're vulnerable and have these open conversations that let people know where they are. Jermaine is different. I come no straight, no chaser. Yeah. I let you know what I require and do not require within a relationship. As you said earlier, lay all your burdens down. I lay all my burdens down on the table and allow that woman standing in front of them to make a conscious decision whether or not she wants to deal with Jermaine or not. So as we move forward in our relationship, you can't come to me and say, well, you didn't share these things with me. Oh, yes, I did. So that's what happens when, as I stated, men don't allow themselves to be vulnerable and have these open and candid, needed conversations.
Yeah.
And the reason why men don't do that, because most of the time women throw it back up into their face when they get mad and when there's an intense fellowship transpiring. Yeah. And then you go, and so now I would never tell you nothing else again, because all you're going to do is throw it back up in my face when there's an intense fellowship. So a lot of times that's one of the reasons why men don't show their insecurity, because it's thrown back up in their face.
And so if they feel like they can't share their insecurity, should they be getting married?
Not to that person.
No.
Not to that person. Right. Because if that means I can't trust you with my feelings and my emotions. So if I can't trust you with my feelings and my emotions, then no, we should not get married. Maybe not at that particular time. I mean, I shouldn't marry you, but maybe we shouldn't get married. We need to discuss these things. And a lot of these things should be discussed, when you're going out dating, these are the things that should be discussed during that set, so that everybody will know, okay, whether or not I want to deal, like Jermaine said, whether or not I want to deal with that. Do I have the capacity to deal with that? Let me make an intelligent decision whether or not I want to move forward. Don't wait until I say I do, and then you telling me, oh, I'm finding all these things out about you. That is simply not right.
In addition to that, one of the wife's role is to be a helpmeet. She's there to help us when the husband falls short. She's there to give him that emotional support that he needs. Once he reveals those vulnerabilities he has, that's when you need to have the open conversation, like I said, to discuss how can we move past this. You can be assured that you can have these conversations with me, and like Jasper said, I won't throw it back up in your face and make you seem like or be embarrassed about once those things surface.
Yeah. Now, so here's the thing. It sounds like we're putting it back on the women. I want to bring it back to the guys, right? I want to bring it back to, at what point do you decide? What point do you decide to say, this is my area of insecurity, or right? We don't want ownership in it. This is the area of insecurity that needs to be healed. Yes, the woman is the help me. God created her, to help, but then you also have to help yourself.
Let's talk about pre-marriage. I think that's what you're alluding to. All right. A lot of times, men just don't deal with issues like that, especially in the past. And they are mental health issues.
Yeah.
And so now today we are discussing mental health, but back then, if you talk about mental health, you talk about a disability, or something of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Autistic or something like that. And so you didn't want to identify yourself with being autistic or have a disability. So we didn't discuss these mental health issues. Now today, we understand that mental health has a range of emotions, and not just you on disability. It's not that you have special ed or anything like that, but we all have mental health issues. We all have abandonment. We all have post-traumatic distress disorder. We all have anger and all these kind of things that need to be addressed before we can become anything else in a relationship. Okay, and so now,
are you saying before you even get into a relationship that
before
you should
you even
be
get to a
addressing those
yes,
with either a professional, whether it's a therapist, a coach, whomever, before you're even entering into a relationship?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I love that. Jermaine, what's your take on that?
I agree. I mean, you should, like I said earlier, you should have these open conversations even before you decide. We don't do the old-fashioned way of courting anymore. We don't date. We just jump right into a relationship. We don't take the time to get to know this person's ins and out, their favorite colors, their favorite things that they like to do. First of all, how are we connected? What chemistry, brought us together? Let's talk about that first. What chemistry allow us, that man and woman, to meet? And once you do that, you sit down and talk about those issues and those areas in your life that you have to be healed from, that you're still suffering from. For me, it was the insecurities. It was the trust issues, because I had to constantly prove myself that I am who you see that's standing in front of me. So for me, I had to constantly search within myself to make sure that I am not displaying off a negative image to anyone that I come across. So I had to be able to, and I'm still suffering from that now. It's like when I meet women and I talk to them, we sit down and we engage, and we discover we have similar interests and likes and desires and aspirations in life. The question comes out, well, wow, you've been single for how long now?
Yeah.
When is the real Jermaine going to come out? And I'm like,
and so that triggers, right?
Right.
When they ask that question, when is the real Jermaine going to come out? That triggers the trust issues, the insecurities that you had because you haven't completely healed them.
And I want to say, and even in talking about what you said, and getting to the point and pointing the finger at the man, one of the things that we don't have supporting casts. We don't have a support system. Okay. You know, one of the things I even told you about was we go to this big mega church and I don't have no friends, and it's not like I'm not friendly. You know, like to talk about my issues, to talk about, I can't always get to my pastor. I can't always get to, one of those things, right? And I said, even in our divorce, I know you had a supporting cast. I had nobody. So I made mistakes after mistakes after mistakes after mistakes when I'm trying to, get the marriage back together. All I was doing was pulling us apart because I had no supporting past. I had nobody saying, no, you don't do that. You do this, send flowers, shut your mouth. I didn't have none of that kind of, nothing like that at all. All I had was my own mindset. Now, here I am dealing with a divorce with an abandonment issue.
Yeah.
Okay. With an insecurity issue. Okay. You follow what I'm saying? All it did was make the situation worse. So I did not have a supporting cast. I did not deal with those issues prior to saying, before I even decide I want to even say hello to a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And those things, those core things need to be addressed. And unfortunately, they're not addressed. And that's why, and then it affects the prophet, priest, and king on the inside of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So now I can't be an effective prophet, priest, and king. All right. When I'm still in the insecure stage, I'm still in the abandonment stage. So we need to deal with those issues pre-dating.
Pre-dating, absolutely. And that's exactly where I was going. So I'm so glad that you wrapped it up there, is that oftentimes men typically don't necessarily have the same supports. I think there are some supports there, but they don't have the same supports that women, have, and pretty much that they avail themselves to. Going back to what Jermaine mentioned earlier, that, you guys are just taught to be strong. You don't do this. If you do that, then you look like this, right? And so that's a learned behavior from the development from a kid to what a man is supposed to be like, right? Mm-hmm. At the same time, even with women having those supports, you still need to be able to support yourself at some level, because then you'll lean to the understanding of somebody else, and it may not be the best thing for yourself. For example, when you and I divorced, I literally took a 2-year sabbatical. I shared that the last couple episodes. And so I literally took a 2-year sabbatical. I didn't realize it was going to be 2 years, but I knew that I needed to get back to me, whatever that was. I knew that the Tasha of 20 years old and the Tasha of 30 plus years old was completely different. However, I grew chronologically, but I didn't grow soul, right? My soul didn't grow with my age. And so I had to relearn and unlearn who I was, what I thought I liked. And so I believe that if men would take the time, like you said, Jasper, on the last broadcast, let the door stay closed. Don't open another door before you deal with the matters of your own heart. Take the time to check in with yourself and say, God, where did I blow it at? What are the areas that I miss? Too often, men and women go back and forth. Well, he did this, so I did that. Well, she did this, so I did that. Listen, I just want to know what I did so that I can do better going forward. And here's the thing, not for another relationship, but for myself.
Exactly.
For myself. Because if you take the time to heal yourself, the relationship will heal as well. Why? Because you'll begin to have the language to explain the insecurities that you couldn't necessarily identify the first time around. You'll be able to clearly articulate and identify what the triggers are before they even are triggered, to say, hey, that's triggering me. Mm-hmm. That makes me feel like X. But if you don't allow one door to completely close, keep it closed before you go into the next thing, you are taking yourself and the party that you came out of into the next relationship.
Absolutely.
Jermaine mentioned that he still is challenged with the insecurities from the last relationship, right? Because there were trust issues. And so he's now brought that person along with him old self to a certain extent into this new situation. And so you have to relinquish the challenges of the other person and focus in on yourself, keeping that door closed before you open another one. Because we all know that if you don't change yourself, you'll go into the next thing the same way. And so if you would take time to change that mindset, to renew that mind based on who you are today, right? Oftentimes, your mindset is based off of who you learn to be. But who am I today? Taking that time to say, who am I today? What is it that I like? What is it that I don't like? And then begin to heal those issues before entering in to anything new. And that's dating, that's having a conversation. That is all the way across the board, because you gotta begin to know you. And so when you get in a place where you're dating, you're now putting somebody in the space of getting to know them where you were supposed to be getting to know you. And so now you make them a thief because you've put them in a place that they never were supposed to be in that season and time of your life. And so we got to renew our mind before we can mind a marriage. I'm going to say that again. We have to renew our mind before we can ever mind a marriage. We can't take what we think is going to work into a relationship and just hope that it works. Going back to what you said about hope 2 broadcasts ago. Hope is a dangerous place if you hang out there too long. And so you have to be able to navigate and shift, be able to identify those triggers in yourself and in the other person before they happen, so you don't end up in the same situations over and over and over again. So renewing that mind, right? I want to make sure that we're given the proper tools and the clarity of how we can get out of that broken mindset that we're very aware that we have when we enter in. Can we just let the door stay closed for a second, guys?
Yeah.
And I'm talking to all of you guys that are listening on Facebook Live and on YouTube, and those that'll come back in the replay. Can you leave the door closed for a minute?
Yeah.
And we're talking about it from the male perspective, but women are quick too. They go from one relationship to another relationship that I can't even keep up with who Bay is. Wait a minute. Last week, Bay was light skinned. This week, Bay is dark skinned. The next week, Bay is a whole different ethnicity. Can't we just keep the door closed for a minute so that we can heal the holes that are within us?
Yeah.
That's your talk. One of the things that I've learned, and I just discovered this past August, why I am the person I am today as far as being in the dating world. I learned that I was not healed from a past relationship when I was 19 years old.
And you're how old now?
I'm 54. So I've been suffering with this broken relationship at that time for 35 years. I don't know if you want me to mention other podcasts. That's up to you. But I watched this podcast. You want me to mention the name?
No, you can just watch the podcast and whatever you got from it. That's fine.
Yeah. I watched this podcast, and the pastor, he revealed some things to me that I'm like, so that's why I'm acting in this manner. That's why I can't trust women. That's why I'm so hesitant about being vulnerable and allow myself to open, because I was not healed from that person that hurt me 35 years ago.
Yeah.
I talk about the insecurities and the trust issues. I don't want to open myself up to someone, allow myself to be totally vulnerable and give my all, because I was not healed from that 35-year-old relationship.
Yeah.
Now I've learned how to process that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still struggling a little.
Yeah.
It's only been 3 months. I'm still struggling a little to allow myself to be vulnerable, allow myself to share my thoughts, allow myself to be open with women, allow them to know that I am searching for a marriage. I'm dating for a purpose. I'm not here to waste anybody's time. But as you said earlier, lay all your baggage down on the table to discuss what those issues are, what those vulnerabilities look like, and what the hurt look like, so you can have an open conversation with that individual, so you can move forward and have a positive relationship.
Yeah. And I love how you said to be open and vulnerable, and you said with the other person, but it got to start with yourself, right? Yeah. And so it's being open and vulnerable. And so it sounds a little weird, or it sounds a little interesting when you say being open and vulnerable. If you be open and vulnerable with yourself, but oftentimes we're not. We don't want to face the truth. We don't want to see those areas that we don't think that we know should be better. And so we put them off and put them off and put them off until they blow up, manifest in a relationship, and then we are forced to face them. And so taking the time to be vulnerable with yourself. I had to do that myself. I had to realize, I don't like that person. And oftentimes the things that you don't like about somebody else is the very thing that you are, right? I remember personally, I saw somebody in a grocery store and I said, oh, they nasty. And God said, that's you. I said, oh my, because you are so quick to see the deficiencies in somebody else, but not see them in yourself. And so the very thing that you're quick to point out in somebody else, turn it back on you. I call it judge your own judgment. When you're in a place where you feel like you're getting ready to judge somebody, judge your judgment. Put you in that place and see how you will judge it, right? So being vulnerable, being open with yourself, sitting with it, and then doing the work to change it versus going in saying, this is where I am. These are the areas where I need to improve. But you're going in already healing or healed for that matter.
Right. One of the things that men don't do, we leave the door open, okay? And there's a saying that I was taught.
You leave the door open as it relates to what?
Relationships, like we was talking about closing the door. I'm still going to close the door piece.
Yeah. So you leave the door open for the person to come back, or
whatever.
Okay.
Everything that's behind it, you should have been closed because the door is still open.
Okay.
Right? Because one of the things that most men are taught is how do you get over another woman? Is get on top of another woman. That's the kind of
that's right.
Right. Yes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm talking about, leaving the door open. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then all your junk, all the hurts, all the pain, all that other stuff, comes along with you when the door in front of you opens up.
Yeah.
Or when another relationship is about. So the purpose of closing the door is to allow the process of to be revealed why you need to keep that door closed. So things are being revealed to you, then things are being downloaded in you, and then you're developing strategies so that you can execute. Mm-hmm. Okay, and moving forward.
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying? And these are the things that are not happening because we're allowing the door behind us to remain open. And all of the garbage,
and let me ask you that. That's an interesting point, and it brings this question to mind. Are men afraid to be alone?
Absolutely.
Because you hear about, women don't want to be alone, but when you say you go from one woman to a next, that brings to mind, well, are men afraid to be alone?
Absolutely.
And they move right on?
They don't want to be by themselves. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be by themselves. We don't want to be by ourselves. No. We want to, I think that's in any, whether you're heterosexual or gay or whatever, I think nobody wants to be alone.
Yeah.
Okay. But there are periods in time that you must be alone.
Yes.
Okay. And we don't want to take that time to being alone so that we realize, you know what I'm saying? And understand what happens. The Bible says wisdom is a principal thing, but out of all you're getting, get what? Understanding. So we go into the next relationship not understanding why we got out of the previous relationship. Yeah. We think because we had an argument.
Yes.
Okay? We're dealing with surface things.
We're not saying,
we got it because my insecurities and my low self-esteem
Yeah.
and my abandonment issues, and my post-traumatic stress disorder is the reason. You know what I'm saying? We say, oh,
yeah, let's get to the root
she
of
called me a name, and that's how the argument broke out, and that's why the relationship got. No, that's not it.
Yeah.
But then you go on to the next relationship, bringing in abandonment, insecurity, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and you go right out the door with all that stuff with the next person, and that's not fair to the next person.
Yeah, and it's not fair to you. It's not fair to the next person. It's not fair to you because it's heart trauma, right? Every relationship builds up calluses in the heart, right? And so when you go from one relationship to the next relationship to the next relationship, your heart has recall of them. Every single relationship. And so it's not fair to you to continue in that, as you said, post-traumatic stress. What is post? Something that happened previous. And so if you keep doing that in a relationship, you're building up your post, literally, right? And so, and you gotta, like you said, close that door so that you can bring down all of those posts. So you can heal all of those posts.
I agree. You gotta purge yourself. You gotta purge yourself.
Yes, that's a great word. Purge.
You accounted for in the previous relationship. Take that time. If it takes a year, 3 years, or whatever, no one can put a time frame on how you can heal. Only you know how long it takes for you to heal. Only you know what's best for you. So you got to take that time to purge yourself.
Yeah, I love that.
And when you're purging, I cannot be concerned about what the other party did. I need to be concerned about what part that I played in the situation.
Yeah, okay? Right.
Right, because you can't change nobody else, but you can change you.
Right. Okay? And in changing you, it helps others change. It really does. It helps others change when you change you. But Jermaine, I love that purging, right? I love that word choice specifically because people don't want to purge, right? You can look around in your life and see areas where you've held on to things, where you hoard specific things, is because you don't want to purge. And so what is happening on the outside is a direct reflection of what's going on in the inside. And so you have to purge, guys. You got to purge that old mindset. You got to purge your habits, right? Habits sometimes is stronger than even your mindset. Get in the car and go to work, or go somewhere that you frequent on a regular. Your mind ain't involved. Your habits take you to where you're going. And so you got to also purge those habits. You got to relearn a different route. That's good right there. Relearn a different route, because guess what? It ain't working for you. That same route that you've been doing, it's not working for you. So we got to purge those things. I want to move on because time is ticking, right? Time waits for no man. And so I want to move on. And I want to, when we did our meeting, we talked about a healthy versus unhealthy compromise, right? We enter into relationships and, we say, okay, I'm willing to compromise on this and I'm not willing to compromise on that. But I want to talk about the areas of compromise that you're willing to compromise on, and then why, right? Because I think sometimes people, I know people have, okay, I'll be able to compromise. I'm flexible here, but they never identify why. It's just not one of their deal breakers. And so what is one of those areas that you like, okay, I'll compromise on here with this, and then why are you willing to compromise there?
Okay. So really quick, my deal breakers are no profanity, vulgar language, smoking, and excessive drinking. And the latter part that I'm willing to compromise is drinking. If you have a drink with your meal, that's fine. I'm willing to compromise on that. But as far as the other two that I mentioned, the profaning, vulgar language, and toxic interactions, the yelling and screaming, that's something I would not compromise with. I don't care how great the woman looks. I don't care about her previous state in which she is. I don't care about her riches. I don't care what she looks like. That's something I will not tolerate, is the profanity, vulgar language, and the toxic interactions with each other. Okay. What I can't compromise in is, like I said, with the drinking that's something that I can compromise with, because I know that if I'm in a relationship with a woman, she wants to drink something with her meal, glass of wine, that's fine. But as far as the toxicity in the relationship, the
So
drinking,
let me ask you a question here to be an angel's advocate, right? Remember earlier I mentioned that oftentimes people marry the state that the person is in, right? And
right?
so when you're saying that I'm willing to compromise if you have a glass of wine with your meal, that's the state that they're in. But if you fast forward 5 years, 10 years down, will you be okay with that later, right? What happens if one glass turns into 10 with the meal? It's just at mealtime. I'll take another one. I'll take another one. And then it ends up being a bottle. People drink, right, a bottle a day sometimes. And
True.
so it's identifying, one, what the compromise is, and then two, why am I willing to compromise? And then make sure you're not compromising a state, because what was okay in this season may not be okay in a season to come.
Well, I'm going to have the conversation with her so it doesn't get to that point. Yes, I'm willing to compromise, because we have to understand this is the individual. She was like that prior to me coming to her life.
Sure.
I don't have the right to tell her you must change for me. She has to change for herself, not for me.
Yeah.
Because she decides to change for me, as you stated later on in life, when we all have issues and concerns, adversity throughout our relationship, throughout our marriage, it could cause her to drink more. So she has to make that conscious decision that she's going to change for herself and not me. So I'm going to have that open conversation with her when I see it getting to that point. So it won't get to one glass, as you stated, to 2, 3, or a bottle of wine. I'm going to have the conversation with her to let her know why I am. And I did compromise with you, but I see that it's getting to become a habit and not necessarily a celebration.
All right, y'all hanging out too easy. Like, I want y'all to get down and dirty and not dirty, but get like to the root of the matter. So I'm going to use me for an example, right? One of my deal breakers is that there's no relationship with Christ, right? That's first. Not just you go to church and you take your Bible, but can you go before the throne of God on my behalf, right? And so it's not a compromise, but the willingness is to allow you the opportunity to get in a place where you can. How is that going to happen? Your relationship with God, one, right? Two, how is your belief system? Right? Because going to the throne of God is all connected to your belief system. So I'm not just looking at your relationship, you talking to God, you praying, but I'm looking at your belief system. I'm looking at, do you get frazzled when things happen, right? How do you address pressured situations? Are you going to God, or are you operating in your own might? Got it? And so if you're operating in your own might, you can't go to the throne of God on my behalf, because you ain't God. And so I'm not just looking at the one area to say, have a relationship with God. I am looking how you handle your everyday living. Are you a worry warrior? Or immediately do you shift and go before the throne of God concerning issues of life? Right? And so I'm willing to work to a certain extent, but I'm also watching. I'm also identifying who you are in that area. What I mean by who you are is that I'm looking at your state right now, but I am not holding you captive in that state. Because you can grow, you can evolve, you can also dissolve. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at the broader picture as to where you are now and then how you are going to get there. Another example is there was a situation with someone where her and their partner went to get something to eat. The partner got something out. They got different things. She asked the partner for a taste of theirs. They said no. They said no and was emphatic about the no, right? And so the partner didn't understand why the woman was so upset. Right? Surface is, are you mad I didn't give you any of my food? No, she's not. It's not about the food. It's about you making a decision. If it came down to you and I, you're going to choose you. If it came down to if it came down to the consideration of you two, you're going to choose you, and maybe you'll give her what's left over. You see, that's surface when you just look at the meal in this example. But it's all about the matter of the heart, how you consider the other person, what you'll do down the line, right? Because it's all cute. Initially, you start dating, you go out, y'all feed each other, right? That's cute. But then we the representative starts to wear off, and you're like, no, you can't have none of this. It has nothing to do with the food, but everything to do with the heart concerning the person. So those kind of compromises.
I think that it will bring the part of intercessory and praying. But I think that a lot of times we as men, we miss that particular aspect of things, that we are supposed to be the one that's interceding for the relationship and finding out which direction the relationship should go. And I think that we missed the mark on those things in the beginning to find out who is this woman that is sitting in front of me.
Yeah.
Who is your daughter, God? Who is this person? And why and what am I supposed to do with, for, and to this person? Right? And we don't do these things because we begin to operate in the surface areas of our lives. You know what I mean? Like, oh, let me take her to Del Frisco's and let me take her out to eat, and I'll feed her. Let me cut her steak. Let me do all these things. Here comes the representative. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
All right, but we're not dealing with the underlying issues. As to we asking these important questions, and like I said, my deal breaker is similar to yours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I don't want anybody. And I don't want to be unequally yoked with a person.
Yeah.
I pay tithes, you don't pay tithes. Or at least if I'm going to be in a relationship with a person, at least I got to have the respect to listen to that person. To say, oh, because to be honest with you, Tasha, you convinced me to pay tithes.
Mm-hmm.
But you started out paying tithes and you convinced me to pay tithes, and I've been paying tithes ever since. I'm just saying,
Amen.
You convinced me that. You initiated that, right?
But here's the thing, and I want to share this because going back to marrying a state, right? When you and I met, we were completely two different states as it related to spirituality, right? And so when we met, I was a babe in Christ. I was just learning the foundations, the principles, of God, who He is, and the belief systems and faith and all of that. Whereas you were all the way on the other side. And so you were willing, that was a compromise, because I remember having that conversation. Like you said, should I be dating somebody that's in perfecting class? But you knew that I wasn't always going to be in perfecting class.
Absolutely.
Right? And so you were willing to say, okay, I'll date her here because I know that she'll eventually get to the place, like you said, I need my wife to be. Mm-hmm. Right? So that's a healthy compromise. Mm-hmm. In that you saw me earnestly going after God, the things of God.
Yes.
Putting my faith with my works consistently. Yes. It's not I just was in perfecting class and then got out of that and that was it. And so that's a healthy compromise to say, okay, this is where you are, but then this is also where I'd like for you to grow to be. Are you willing to do that? Right? Because compromise and comprehension are two different things. Some people don't comprehend the expectation you may need, right? When you say, I want a spouse that can go before the throne of God on my behalf, sometimes they may not comprehend that. And so you got to make sure that the compromise is in alignment. The comprehension is in alignment with the compromise.
I saw the zeal that you had towards wanting to be the woman of God that God called you to be.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the zeal. I saw the work. Okay, coupled with your faith. So I saw that, and so to me that wasn't a compromise. That was just me waiting on you to manifest who you were supposed to be, because the zeal, the work, and the faith, and all that, and the desire. I remember the conversations that we had, and the tears that flowed from your eyes about even if you thought that you disappointed God. You know what I mean? I saw the tears, and so that really wasn't really a compromise. That was just
that's good. That's good to hear that, right?
Yeah, that wasn't a compromise. That was something I saw that in due time it was going to manifest itself. And so one of my like I said, if I see if you're putting God first in your life, we can work out things, the little surface stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then if you allow the Bible to have the most weight.
Yeah, that part.
We can disagree on stuff, but what we know is that we can't go to bed disagreeing. Okay? So what did the Bible say about that particular situation? Okay? So the Bible says XYZ, so we have to line ourselves up to XYZ.
Yeah.
And then if I can find a person that understands and would do that, hey.
Yeah. Yep. And so that's good stuff. And I want to start wrapping it up because we are at our time. I know time just moves, right? Time waits for no man. But I do want to address the issues of life, right? We talked about that on Friday when we talked about, if you heal, then your children won't have to.
Yes.
Right? And Jasper, you went in a little bit more in depth, and you talked about that the man gives life, and so the man reproduces after its own kind. And so I want you to share a bit on that, and then Jermaine, I'm gonna come back and circle back to you.
What I found out is, that the life is in the seed of a man. The Bible says that God breathed life into Adam, not into Eve, but he breathed life into Adam and took life out of Adam and placed it into Eve. Okay? What did that mean? That means that life is in me. So my DNA is in my seed. So if I am a dysfunctional, unhealthy, have abandonment issues, and all those things. And once I pregnate the woman, I reproduce what's on the inside of me in the form of a child.
Yeah.
So now my child is insecure, have abandonment issues. And not only just that, but the sins that I'm involved in, right, follows that seed. And the Bible never says the sins of the mother. He always said the sins of the father.
Yeah.
So now those demon seeds are impregnated. I impregnated the woman with demon seeds, insecurities, with all these things, and she would reproduce what I gave her.
That is so good. And I just want to slow down a bit because people don't even look at the dimensions of that. Like there's insecurity in the seed, in the semen. And so the child is birthed insecure and don't have a clue why.
Don't have a clue why.
The child is birthed with anxiety and don't have a clue why. The child is birthed a liar and don't have a clue why, because it's in the DNA
of a man.
Of a man, the seed, the life giver, as you say. Because we are receivers. It goes beyond just the intimate aspect. We are receivers. So we receive the seed, we receive the vision, and then we manifest it. We birth it.
Yes.
And so whatever is in the seed will reproduce after its own kind. And that's why it's so important to heal before you say I do. Now, all things being equal, all things being equal, and the children come through that way, right? After marriage, then comes the baby. Because if you're healed before you say I do, then the only DNA your children know is the new seed that you are now producing.
Absolutely. So it's imperative, and I'm speaking to the men, it's imperative that you get your life, your walk, and your heart right with God. It is imperative, because here's the question: do you want another you walking around in the earth?
Come on.
Okay.
Like, do you really, like, people throw that out there?
You really want it? Do you really? Not talking about see.
Real quick. I want to bring it down into 21st term, 2021 terms. People run around and they throw this mini me out. I don't want my kids to be a mini me of anything.
No.
And here's the reason why: God created them to be a big them. And so when you put your words on them to say be a mini me, you are only reinforcing what's already in your DNA. The issues, the areas, the deficiencies that you have, you've now placed it on them again with your words. And so when you talk about that, it becomes, now it's a cliche. It's cute. This is a mini me. You don't want a mini you. You already created a mini you with your DNA.
I want them to be different because
you want them to be
right, to be who God called them to be. Okay. And here's the thing, men. Let me get back. I'm looking at you, men. Okay. If you were the only person that God had to depend on to do what you are supposed to do in the earth realm, is God in trouble?
That's good.
Is God in trouble? See, and you don't have to answer it. These are the things you need to ask yourself when you look in the mirror every single day.
Well, they do need to answer it.
Not now. I'm just talking about.
Yeah, now, right? We real time. I want them to answer it now.
Oh, you want them to answer? Okay.
I want them to answer it now, right? This is real time transformation.
Okay.
Because a question requires an answer. The problem is people hoard questions all their life. They come on broadcasts like this. They go to conferences. They're stimulated. They're inspired. They're motivated. And then they hoard everything that they receive. No, answer the question. Is God in trouble? And here's the thing. I'm going to dial it back a bit for those that may not be in the place to say, is God in trouble? That it would affect you, that it will be impact. But what if it was your mother? What if it was your father? What if it was your wife? What if it was your husband? I know you're talking to men, but I'm making it broad for everybody. Would they be in trouble if all they had to do was depend on you? Would they be in trouble? Right. That's how I started my journey.
Me too.
In 2009, I had a come to me moment. I considered my son who had special needs and said that if I don't change the way that I'm doing life, I'm giving life an opportunity to check up out of here early, which will then leave him here as a burden on somebody else if I don't change. And so that translates to all he had was me to depend on. And at that time, he was in trouble. Not no more.
Right.
Not anymore.
Right.
So you have to answer the question. I answered the question, and that's why my life has changed and evolved over and over and over again. And then I've asked myself multiple other questions now, but it started with that one question. The people that depend on only you, are they in trouble?
Are they in trouble?
Great.
So Jason, when you said that when we met on Friday, healed so your children don't have to, that struck home to me because in my relationship journey, my children are watching. And guess what? My insecurities, my inability to have a healthy relationship has now affected them. And it really hurt me to hear my daughter, my oldest child, to say, wow, Dad, I think I picked up on some of your traits because I don't have patience as it relates to relationships. I don't give people the opportunity to prove who they are. I bail out quickly just as you do. Both of my daughters said this.
Yeah.
Man, I have to heal myself, like you said, so your children don't have to.
Yeah.
I have to make that conscious decision to keep evolving to be a better Jermaine. And I'm challenging, just like you did, Jasper, the men who are watching, since this broadcast is specifically for us.
Yeah.
Men, take the opportunity, as we said earlier, close that door from previous relationships.
Good stuff.
Give the opportunity to purge yourself. Get the opportunity to go to counseling. Get the opportunity to get the support that you need. We mentioned there was not many support systems in the community for men, but do your research. There are resources out there that can help you with the challenges that you have as it relates to your previous relationship that you suffer from. Take that time to heal so your children won't have to.
That's
heal
so
so your wife won't have to. Heal so your family won't have to. Okay? Heal. Okay? That is so important that we have to do. We have to heal. And I think, we so macho. We think, we can put everything on our shoulder and we can do this. And if we go sit in front of a therapist or go sit in front of that's a sign of weakness. No, it's not. It's not a sign of weakness.
And so, have you guys seen a therapist?
Oh,
yes.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
I think that's important for men to see and hear that other men go to therapy. That other men said, listen, I got to get outside of myself and get some help. And here's the thing, consistently, because healing is compartmentalized for the sake of an example, right? It's just like an onion, like one layer is peeled back at a time, and then you heal that, and then another layer is peeled back. Because if all of your healing presents itself, all of your need to healing presents itself at one time, it can overwhelm you and you'll be like, I'm out. God is so loving that he says, okay, once you heal that, you become strong in this area, we're going to peel that back. Once you heal that, you become strong in that area, we're going to peel it back. And so it's consistent, right? It's it's evolution to healing, right? But here's the beauty in it. Here's the beauty in it is the more you heal, the quicker you'll do it and get in front of it. I talked about identifying the triggers ahead of time. That's what healing does. And so I love this. I love this conversation, guys. I appreciate your transparency, your openness, your honesty to say, listen, I blew it in some areas. And guess what? I'm still working. I love that, Jermaine. You said, I'm still struggling. I don't like the word struggle, but you're still having a challenge with it. I love that because people, not just men, we are talking to the men, but people need to see that they are not in it alone, that everybody's healing is their own personal process, and that it looks very different for each and every one of us. We're all still working on some things. In fact, if you got everything under wraps, you can go ahead and check out.
Right. And look, Josh.
The Bible says that we go from glory to glory, to grace to grace. How do you do that? We heal from glory to glory to grace to grace.
But when you find that perfect person, let me meet him. I want to meet him.
Say it again.
I said, when you find that perfect individual, I want to meet him because
yeah, it is the one.
His name is Jesus.
That part, right? And so I want to open it up. I always give an opportunity, to have the audience to share. Right, it's a conversation. And so if there were any, comments that, helped inspire, stimulate you, or you need some clarity of something, or you have a question for the panelists, take this time to ask those questions and or share those comments. We want to hear from you. It's a conversation. It's not a dialogue. We are here to show you the areas that we have healed from, the areas that still need to be healed, to be open and honest, to say, listen, I blew that. And so you're not alone. So we want to hear from you. We want to know what inspired you. What are you going to do today? Jasper mentioned that if you heal now, your children won't have to. And so what are you going to do to begin that healing? And so Lisette says, do you always know your areas of insecurity when you're ready to get married? Or are you looking to pacify your insecurities by getting married? That is a phenomenal question. And so here's the thing. Sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, right? And I think, and I'll let the guys share one quick tip or revelation, if you will, about that, is that sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. And so pacifying those insecurities could come by way of what? What are you looking for when you're looking for those insecurities to be pacified? Jermaine, I'm gonna start with you.
That's a great question. So prior to August, yes, I was still struggling with those issues. I was still pacifying my insecurities. But now moving forward, I made a conscious decision, like I can't continue to be the old Jermaine that it was. I have to address those insecurities, which were for me were trust and insecurities. I had to bury those issues and allow myself to say, now I'm ready to open my heart up to be with the woman that God has ordained for me. I'm going to continue to pray for that woman that I want, and that God is going to allow that woman and allow me to find that woman. So yes, I that's a great question. I was pacifying myself in going into relationships by trying to bury those insecurities, but I'm not doing it anymore.
Amen. And Jasper?
Yeah. First of all, let's recognize we all have insecurities. Okay. When you understand we all have insecurities, I'm gonna give you an analogy. How sometimes when you see a car that you want, like a Tesla or whatever, and then you notice that when you go out, you start seeing a lot of Teslas. It's like, wow, okay. So when you identify that you have insecurities, then all of a sudden you're gonna realize the insecurity areas that you're insecure in.
Yeah.
And right when you identify those areas, that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a great place to start. Okay, I shared in my book about how to get from one place to another. I want to go to Philadelphia, and I got on MapQuest, right? And the first question that MapQuest asked me was, "Where are you?" Okay, and so we got to identify and accept that where we are in life. And wherever we are in life, the insecurities, the abandonment, the post-traumatic stress, all these things, it's a great place to start. Because once you identify where you are in life, now you can get the information on how to get to where you want to go. But the first step is identifying where you at. And so with your insecurities, your areas are going to show up. It's going to show up. You know it's going to show up.
Yeah, I like that. And so when you gave the analogy of the Tesla, that's your RAS, right? It's called a reticular activating system. And so the moment that you acknowledge anything, whether it's good or bad, right? Whether it's good or bad, it's going to continue to show up. And so I love that principle, I love the locator, if you will, that you gave them to say it's going to show up. It's going to continue to show up, because even if you attempt to put it in your subconscious, it's going to keep showing up, because now the reticular activating system has been activated to help you identify. And here's the thing. It's not opposition. It's opportunity.
Yes.
Opportunity. And so when that reticular activating system has informed you, begin to do the work to heal. Take it as a notification. You guys that are on Facebook and even YouTube, you get a notification, oh, so-and-so is going live, or so-and-so posted this. You go immediately and look at it. That's what I want you to do with the insecurity, right? Because now that we're having this conversation, insecurities are going to start to show up. And so I want you to go quickly and click the notification and see what it is, and then ask God to help. God, like literally surrender yourself, surrender your ego to the help in healing that insecurity. And guess what? It may take time until you begin to undergird yourself and strengthen yourself in that area. It's going to take time to heal it. Allow yourself to heal.
Preach, Black woman.
Grace. Give yourself the grace to heal, right? I've mentioned before that people can look at me and consider my response to life as arrogant. It's not as confident, right? I just don't hang out in it. I identify it, I acknowledge it, and I execute, period. You'll never see me having a woe it's me moment, right? And so that's how you have to deal with your notifications. Identify it, own it. It's real. You are insecure in that area. You are offended in that area. You need to address some things in that area. It's a real thing. But don't hang out there. Don't beat yourself up. There is no condemnation in God. So why would there be any condemnation in me? That's what happens when you hold on to things that you've been notified of. Don't hold on to them. Heal them.
Amen.
Heal them from the inside out. And guess what? Starting today, I saw a comment from Lakita. She says, thank you all. The dialogue really helped me to realize my insecurities that I try to fight by not acknowledging it because I didn't want it to be true. Of course, Lakita, none of us want our truth to be our truth. Guess what? It doesn't have to be our truth once we heal it because we don't have to own it. We don't have to take up residence in it. And so I love that this dialogue, this conversation has helped you to identify and say, got it. Now, the next thing to do is just to begin, not just, but to begin to heal those insecurities. God does not want us insecure. And guess what? You want to break that so that your kids and your grandkids and their kids don't have to break it. It starts with you. How do I know? It starts with whomever the person is that get the information. I am a curse breaker because I got the information. I'm not saying, oh, I got it. I'm saying I got it. I have divine revelation. So I'm the curse breaker, right? I'm doing the work that I'm doing and the work that I've done so that my great grandkids won't even have a thought of it. They'll look back on history and say, wow, I've never experienced that. Right? And so be the one to change the generations to come. It's a real thing. Change the DNA. Change the DNA of your thinking. Change the DNA of your living. Change the DNA of your being. The person that I am today, I was not this person 10 years ago. As a matter of fact, I am changing so quickly. I ain't the same person I was 2 hours ago. Seriously, right? I had an opportunity to be offended 2 hours ago. I'm not. And so change, heal will bring about the change. Start where you are. Jasper mentioned that. And then grow thereby. But give yourself grace. Give yourself patience. And absolutely no condemnation.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Yes, Kim, you are indeed the curse breaker. And so, guys, we are going to wrap up this session. As always, I am very appreciative of your time, of your consistency, of your communicating. I've been seeing, some of you guys post here. I appreciate that, and I honor you for taking this time out to change. Matters of the Heart is all about the matters of your heart, not just in one area, but in every area of your life. It starts with the heart. And so we don't want any traumas. We want abundance in our hearts in every area. And so take what you've heard, right? And meditate on it. Let that RAS, reticular activating system, work for you and not against you. So heal so your children won't have to. Have an amazing day simply because you can. God's peace.